I thought the corporate event in New York was my big break as a fashion intern, but when the boss's wife spotted our flirty texts on his phone during the toast, she leaned in and whispered, "No one's gonna believe you." That moment froze me. Her words hit like a gut punch, and I knew my secret fling was about to blow up in front of everyone. And I'm 25, fresh out of college, working as an intern at a high-end fashion house in Manhattan. I moved here from a small town in Ohio last year, crashing on a friend's couch at first because rent is insane. Think tiny studio apartments with noisy radiators and the constant smell of street food vendors below. My vulnerability? I'm broke and desperate to make it in this cutthroat industry. One wrong move and I'm back home flipping burgers. The boss, let's call him Mark, is the director. Mid-40s, sharp suit, always reeking of that expensive cologne that lingers in the elevator like a promise of power. It started innocently enough with him praising my sketches in the office, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead and the click of keyboards filling the air. And at first, the red flags were subtle. Mark would linger by my desk, his hand brushing mine when handing over files, the paper crinkling under our fingers. He'd say things like, "You're too sensitive about deadlines," when I'd push back on late-night tasks, making me doubt myself. But I brushed it off. I needed this job. Then came the texts. It began with work stuff, but soon escalated to compliments like, "You looked great today." My phone would buzz at odd hours, the screen lighting up my dark room with that blue glow, and I'd feel a rush mixed with unease. The symbol of it all was my phone. Once just a tool for emails, now a secret lifeline buzzing with risk. And his cologne? It became this recurring reminder, clinging to my clothes after close encounters, a scent of success tainted with something off. NTHE escalation kicked off in the elevator one afternoon. We were alone, the doors closing with a soft ding, and he stepped closer, his breath warm on my ear. "Without me, you're nothing in this city," he whispered, his hand grazing my arm, the fabric of my blouse shifting under his touch. I froze, the hum of the elevator cables vibrating through the floor. I laughed it off nervously, but it planted a seed of doubt. That night, the text got bolder. Photos from his trips, hints at opportunities if I played along. My heart raced every time the notification sound chimed, cutting through the silence of my apartment like a warning. And a week later, things ramped up at a team meeting. He assigned me a special project, pulling me into his office after hours, the city lights twinkling outside the window, the air thick with his cologne again. He leaned in saying, "This is for your own good. Trust me." His words echoed those toxic phrases I'd heard before, making my skin crawl. I nodded, but inside, I was panicking, my palms sweaty on the desk's cool surface. The phone became my anchor and my trap. I'd screenshot some messages just in case, the click of the button feeling like a small act of rebellion. NTHE peak came at the corporate party in Cipriani's penthouse. The room was buzzing, clinking glasses, laughter echoing off the high ceilings, the faint smell of gourmet appetizers wafting through. Mark pulled me aside in the crowd, his hand on my lower back, whispering promises under the dim chandelier light. But then his wife, glamorous, high society type, picked up his phone left on the bar during the toast. The screen lit up with our chat, my name right there. She turned, eyes narrowing, and the room seemed to quiet as she confronted him in front of guests, her voice sharp over the background jazz music. The jazz faded into a tense hum as all eyes turned to Mark's wife, Claire, clutching his phone like a grenade. My stomach dropped, the weight of her glare pinning me in place under the chandelier's soft glow. The clink of a dropped fork echoed somewhere in the room, and I swear I could smell her floral perfume cutting through the haze of appetizers. I wanted to disappear, but my phone, tucked in my clutch, felt like a ticking bomb. Those screenshots were my only shield now, and I tried to play it cool, slipping toward the bar to avoid the whispers rippling through the crowd. Mark's face was pale, his usual confidence gone as he stammered to Claire, "It's just a misunderstanding." But her eyes locked onto mine, and she hissed, "This was just a joke, right?" Her voice dripped with venom, the kind that made my hands tremble as I gripped the bar's cold edge. I didn't answer, couldn't. My mind was racing, replaying every late-night text, every brush of his hand. Had I been naive, or was I just a pawn in his game? The room felt smaller, the city skyline outside the penthouse windows blurring into streaks of light. Later that night, alone in my apartment, the radiator hissed like it was mocking me. I scrolled through the screenshots on my phone, each one a reminder of how deep I'd fallen. Mark had texted things like, "Meet me after hours," and I'd stupidly thought it was about work. I felt like an idiot, my fingers cold as I swiped through the evidence. But then something clicked. Claire's outburst wasn't just about jealousy. She'd mentioned a deal during her rant, something about Mark's other promises. What else was he hiding? The cologne-scented memory of his office lingered in my mind, but now it felt less like a lure and more like a trap. NTHE next morning. I got to the office early, the fluorescent lights harsher than usual, the smell of stale coffee grounding me. I overheard a coworker, Sarah, whispering about Claire's meltdown at the party. Sarah had seen Mark's hand on my back, had noticed the way he lingered near me all night. She pulled me aside in the break room, her voice low over the hum of the vending machine. "I saw everything," she said, her eyes sharp but kind. "If you need someone to back you up, I'm here." That was my first lifeline. Someone who'd witnessed it all. Someone who could tip the scales. NTHE escalation didn't stop there. Mark called me into his office later that day, the door clicking shut with a sound that made my pulse spike. His cologne hit me again, but now it felt suffocating. He leaned back in his chair, smirking. "You're too sensitive, kid," he said, tossing my phone a glance like he knew I had those screenshots. "No one's going to believe you over me." His words stung, but they also lit a fire. I wasn't just some small-town girl anymore. I'd clawed my way into this city, and I wasn't about to let him bury me. My phone, still in my hand, buzzed with a new message from him. "Delete those texts. It's for your own good." I didn't respond, but I saved that one too, the screen's glow reflecting my growing resolve. NBY the end of the week, the office was a minefield. Whispers followed me in the halls, the tap of keyboards sounding like judgment. Claire had started dropping hints on her socialite Instagram, vague posts about betrayal that got colleagues side-eyeing me. I felt exposed, like every move was watched. But Sarah's words stuck with me. She'd seen the truth, and those screenshots were my ace. I just needed to figure out how to play it without losing everything I'd worked for. The office felt like a pressure cooker, every glance and whisper tightening the knot in my chest. I kept my phone close, its weight in my pocket, a constant reminder of the screenshots that could either save me or sink me. The smell of burnt coffee from the break room clung to the air, and the cold hum of the AC made my skin prickle as I walked past Mark's office. I could still hear his smug voice. "No one's gonna believe you." But I wasn't backing down. Not anymore. NTHE next escalation came fast. Claire showed up at the office unannounced, her heels clicking sharply on the marble floor like a warning shot. She cornered me in the copy room, the machine's rhythmic whir drowning out the usual office chatter. "This is for your own good," she said, her voice low and icy, her perfume overwhelming in the cramped space. She'd found another text, one I didn't even know Mark sent, forwarded to her by a colleague who'd been snooping. My heart sank. The phone wasn't just a symbol of my mistake now, it was a noose. I mumbled an excuse and slipped out, my hands shaking as I clutched a stack of papers, their edges sharp against my fingers. NTHAT night. I met Sarah at a diner across town, the neon sign outside buzzing faintly, casting a red glow through the window. Over greasy fries and the smell of grilled onions, she told me she'd overheard Claire talking to HR about inappropriate conduct. Sarah had saved a voice memo of Claire's rant at the party, where she'd accidentally let slip that Mark had been funneling company funds to a side project, something shady. That was the turn. Her memo, combined with my screenshots, wasn't just about our fling anymore. It was proof of something bigger. The city's skyline glittered outside, but inside, my resolve hardened, the cold glass of soda sweating under my grip. And I started my countermove carefully. I emailed HR anonymously from a coffee shop, the clatter of dishes and espresso machines masking my nerves. I attached the screenshots, keeping my name out of it, and mentioned Claire's rant about the funds. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, the plastic keys slick with my sweat. I didn't want to just save myself. I wanted Mark to face the mess he'd made. Sarah agreed to back me up, promising to share her memo if HR pushed back. The risk was real. If this backfired, I'd be blacklisted in the industry, my dream of making it in fashion gone. But staying silent felt worse, like letting his cologne choke me forever. NTHE office buzzed with tension the next day. I overheard colleagues whispering about an investigation, their voices hushed over the hum of printers. Mark avoided me, his office door shut, but I caught a whiff of his cologne in the hall, a fading ghost of his control. Claire's Instagram went silent, her cryptic posts replaced by a blank grid. I kept my head down, focusing on sketches, the scratch of my pencil grounding me. Sarah texted me, "HR's digging, stay sharp." My phone, once a trap, was now my weapon, its notifications a quiet signal of hope. NBY Friday. The rumors were louder than the office's usual chaos. A senior designer pulled me aside, her voice low under the fluorescent lights. "They're auditing Mark's accounts," she said. I nodded, my pulse racing, the weight of my phone in my pocket reassuring. I didn't know how far this would go, but I'd taken the first step. The city outside kept moving, taxis honking, lights flashing. But for the first time, I felt like I wasn't just along for the ride. I was steering. The office was a ghost town by Monday, the usual hum of keyboards replaced by an eerie quiet. I could still smell the faint trace of Mark's cologne in the elevator, but it felt like a relic now, like something left behind. My phone buzzed with a new email from HR. The screens glow harsh in the dim morning light of my apartment. They wanted to meet me, Sarah, and a few others. My stomach churned, the radiators hiss mocking my nerves as I got ready, slipping my phone into my bag like a loaded gun. NTHE meeting was in a sterile conference room, the table cold under my fingers, the air thick with the scent of cleaning solution. HR laid out the situation. Mark's side project was a front for siphoning company funds, and Claire had known more than she let on. My screenshots, combined with Sarah's voice memo, had cracked the case open. Claire's outburst at the party wasn't just about jealousy. She'd slipped up, mentioning a deal that tied Mark to shady offshore accounts. The board was furious, and whispers of a lawsuit floated through the room, sharp as the click of a pen. I stayed quiet, my heart pounding, but Sarah shot me a look. Her nod was my anchor. Mark's countermove came fast. He tried to spin it, calling an all-hands meeting in the main office, the city skyline looming through the windows. His voice was steady, but his hands shook as he claimed it was all a misunderstanding. He glanced at me, his eyes pleading, but I kept my gaze on my phone, its weight grounding me. "No one's going to believe you," he'd said before, but now the room wasn't so sure. Colleagues shifted uncomfortably, the rustle of their clothes loud in the silence. Claire wasn't there. Her absence screamed louder than any speech. NMY's own countermove kept rolling. I met with HR again, this time openly, handing over every text, every screenshot. My fingers steady despite the cold sweat on my palms. I told them about his toxic phrases, how he'd called me too sensitive to gaslight me, how he'd dangled my career like a carrot. Sarah backed me up, sharing her memo, her voice calm over the hum of the AC. I also reached out to a lawyer friend, just in case, her advice sharp over the clink of coffee cups in a midtown cafe. The risk was still there. Mark had connections, and I was just an intern, but I wasn't alone anymore. NTHE resolution hit like a storm. By midweek, the board suspended Mark pending a full audit. Claire's high society mask cracked. Her Instagram stayed dark, and sources said she'd left town, humiliated after her own slip-up exposed their scheme. The office grapevine buzzed, the sound of gossip louder than the printers. My phone, once a symbol of my mistake, was now my shield, its screenshots shared with the right people. The cologne that once clung to me was gone, replaced by the crisp smell of fresh paper as I worked on new sketches, free from Mark's shadow. The company announced a restructuring, and a new director stepped in, someone who didn't reek of power plays. And I started to breathe easier. The city's chaos, honking taxis, flickering neon, feeling less like a cage. I wasn't naive anymore. I'd learned to protect myself, to trust my gut over empty promises. Sarah and I grabbed drinks one night, the bar's low jazz and clinking glasses a stark contrast to Cipriani's tension. She laughed, saying I'd dodged a bullet. I smiled, but the weight of it all lingered. I'd won, but at what cost? My dream job was safe, but the scars of those texts, that cologne, stayed with me. I wondered if I could have handled it differently. Maybe confronted Mark sooner, or walked away entirely. What would you have done in my shoes? Winning didn't feel like victory. Not entirely. The office was calmer now, the fluorescent lights less oppressive, the air no longer heavy with Mark's cologne. But every time my phone buzzed, I flinched, half expecting another late-night text. I'd kept my job, even got a small promotion, junior designer, a step up from intern. The scratch of my pencil on sketch pads grounded me, the smell of fresh graphite. A reminder I was still here, still fighting for my place in Manhattan's brutal fashion world. NTHE fallout kept unfolding. Mark's suspension turned permanent. The board found enough in the audit to fire him without severance. Whispers circulated about legal action, something about embezzlement, though details were hushed. Claire's absence became a story of its own. Her high society friends dropped her, and I heard she'd moved to the Hamptons, hiding from the gossip that now filled the tabloids she once controlled. Page 6 ran a vague piece about a fashion exec scandal, and I cringed, knowing my screenshots were part of it. My phone, once a trap, had become my sword, but wielding it left me uneasy. Had I gone too far? And Sarah became my rock. We'd meet for coffee in Soho, the clatter of cups and faint espresso aroma cutting through my stress. She'd tease me about my superhero moment, but her voice memo had been just as crucial. She'd recorded Claire's meltdown by chance, her phone tucked in her pocket during the Cipriani toast, catching every word about Mark's deals. That evidence, paired with my texts, had shifted the power. But I couldn't shake the guilt. I'd exposed them, sure, but I'd also played a part in the mess, replying to those texts, letting Mark's charm pull me in. NTHE epilogue came quietly. I moved out of my cramped apartment into a slightly better one. No more radiator hisses, just the hum of a new AC unit and the faint smell of fresh paint. I started setting boundaries, saying no to late-night work, focusing on my designs. The phone, still a symbol, now held my portfolio, not secrets. The cologne faded from memory, replaced by the clean scent of my new sketchbooks. I wasn't the small-town girl chasing dreams anymore. I was someone who'd faced a storm and come out stronger. But the scars lingered. Every office meeting, every new email, made me brace for another betrayal. I'd learned to trust myself, but trusting others? That was harder. One evening, walking through Washington Square Park, the city's pulse, street musicians, honking cabs, felt alive again. I sat on a bench, watching the sunset paint the sky orange, my phone silent in my pocket. I thought about Mark's words. No one's going to believe you. He was wrong. Sarah believed me. HR believed me. And most importantly, I believed myself. I'd fought for my place, not just in the industry, but in my own life. The cost was high. Lost innocence, fractured trust. But I'd gained something too. Control over my story. And I still wonder about the what-ifs. Could I have called Mark out that first night in the elevator? Should I have deleted those texts and walked away? Maybe I'd still be that naive intern, dreaming of runways, not battles. But I chose to fight, and I don't regret it. I'm curious, though, what would you have done? Would you have risked it all to expose the truth, or played it safe to keep the dream alive? Tell me, because I'm still figuring out if I made the right call.